At Powerhouse, we did a lot of really dense exhibitions. So this is an exhibit on the music, fashion, and culture of the 1980s. You can see a big Rubik's Cube that actually worked. It's kind of cool. Very dense exhibition, and this exhibition we used, the curator for it started off with a blog before the exhibition was even approved. And then through social media at that point, this ran from 2009 to late 2010. Facebook came to be a big part of this exhibition, and almost 50% of the objects in this exhibition were loans from the community that we had curated through social media. So we were able to test the idea of the exhibition with the public before it became an exhibit. We were also able to engage the public and get their objects into the exhibition. It was about a period that we all have memories of, or we all have memories of. And the exhibition was very dense, purposely so that visitors would not see everything in one go and they would have to come back. And so there are a lot of stories about people coming in and saying, hey, I saw this, strawberry shortcake. I had one of those as a kid, and their friend would say, I didn't see that. What one did they have? And then they'd come back for another visit. Also did this fashion exhibition, this fashion photography exhibit. This actually works. This was an immersive piece. We had this great selection of fashion photography from a fashion photographer who lived in Australia called Bruno Benini. His photographs were in the Powerhouse collection, and my photographic team built this mirror-based experience where people could walk through. And this was using 3 projectors and six floor-to-ceiling mirrors that created this amazing immersive effect that brought those photos to life in a way that if we'd just done them as photos on the wall, as we had in the rest of the exhibition, would not have worked. And it gave it a real dynamism. And interestingly, the original pitch from the photographer who came up with this idea was built with little cardboard boxes and was about this high. And he came into my office, and Paula, who was my image services manager, and said, hey, I've got this great idea for this fashion show for photography. I've built this with mirrors, what do you reckon? And we saw it was like, can you make that bigger now? And that sort of sense of visitors now expecting an immersive experience, and how can we turn those things that are often quite static, photographic collections, into things, into an immersive piece. So if we jump to Cooper Hewitt now, and I'll just change slide decks now. We're back at Cooper Hewitt, and 2011 we're thinking, early 2012 we're thinking, okay, this is going to happen. And I started to think with my team of what's specific about a design museum. And I think this is what I came up with, was that we weren't an art museum. We were more interested in the processes and the choices people make. We weren't so interested in the finished pieces, how we got to the finished piece. And that was also quite different to a science museum. We posed this challenge to the architectural teams and the media teams we worked with on the Cooper Hewitt, was that we're in this building that's this old house, and it doesn't feel like you're allowed to do anything in that house. You have this collection that's decorative arts, but also contemporary product design, textiles, wallpapers, all these other things. But the house kind of sets the tone, and we needed to change that tone immediately. So we said to them, look, we need to tell visitors that they have explicit permission to play in this building. When they come into that building, they're not going to feel like they can't touch anything. So how are you going to do that? We wanted interactive experiences in the museum because it's a house, so we don't have a lot of space. It's 16,000 square feet, so about 1,600 square metres. It's quite small. The rooms, some of the rooms are like this size, so they're domestic scale. We didn't want people staring at their phones. So if we were going to have screens, they had to be social, they had to be large, and for multiple people to use simultaneously. Similar to the phone piece, we wanted people to look up. We didn't want them looking down at their phones all the time. I also didn't want them looking down at the object labels all the time. That's the other thing. I think one of the things, you know, the effort that we put into writing object labels in museums is admirable and important, but when you visit a museum, you're not there to read a 40,000 word book standing up, because effectively, if you count all the words in those object labels in one exhibition, you're looking at a small novel to read end to end. And working with curators will often say, hey, we actually want people to read those object labels. And then you say to them, would you read them standing up? While there's a 5-year-old kid pulling on your arm as well, wanting to go outside or something else. And they would inevitably say no. So it's that sense of being, you know, we were trying to be conscious of the context in which that visitor uses the museum, for want of a better word. So the museum visitor as a user of the designed museum. Any technology experience we put in that place, we wanted to be ubiquitous. We wanted it to be a default way the museum worked. We'd seen the work at Mona, this museum in Australia. I can show you a photo of Mona. This is Mona in Australia. We actually got the director of Mona to come and visit us and speak to the curatorial staff. And Mona has no object labels at all. They have no text on any wall. They don't even have bathroom signage. Nothing. No maps, no anything. Every visitor gets an iPod Touch that's connected with Wi-Fi, and that's how you navigate the building. This is your media guide. It's also everything. When you go to their website before you visit, you can see what's on, but you can't see anything that's in the exhibitions or anything in the collections. Nothing's online except buy tickets, what the exhibitions are called and the blurbs about them, how to get there, the cafe, the restaurant, things like that. When you use this though, and that's this, when you go home, you get access to everything. But you have to have visited the museum to get access to it. But they tell you not only what you saw, but also what you missed. We thought that this was a genius idea because it builds a reason for having the building. And they have, obviously they have everything online, but they sort of gatekeep that and say, you can get access to that after you've visited us. And I found that a very challenging idea because most of my work for the previous 10 years had been about getting collections out to the broadest possible public, whether they visited or not. But what was interesting with their approach was this assertion that this art matters so much that you have to see it physically before we're going to let you have anything else about it. And I thought that was really bold of them to do that. It's incredibly successful too. I don't think any other museum can probably pull that off. They have an amazingly designed experience. To distribute these, they had to design charging bays to charge 1,500 of these all at once. So your average iPhone charger times 1,500 is going to drag the building power down if you plug them all in at once, right? So they had to design a system around that. Anyway, if you ever get a chance to go, because it does change how you think about how museums could and should be. it also challenges a lot of the assumptions we make about the way visitors behave. And what's interesting about it is they've created an environment that is so immersive and interesting that people change how they behave completely. They also have a bar in the middle of the gallery, so you can stop and have a cocktail or a beer and then go back to looking at art without having to go out to another area. And they have some very challenging art in there too, which is especially great too. But anyway, it's a very interesting model for how things could be. So we looked at this and we thought, all right, if people people can get away with this in Australia, what might that be like in New York? How could we assert that the Design Book Museum's collection and its exhibitions mattered enough that they're all going to be online, but you're still going to want to come to the building? Because, you know, I think museum people, we know that putting things online doesn't take away from people coming to our places. In fact, it advertises us, and it's generally a net positive thing. But also we also need to articulate more why it matters to actually come and see the things. So that's sort of what we pitched. The other thing that we gave, we had a series of assumptions as well. So these assumptions were that we didn't give the designers a free pass on that designer thing for that. We said, well, hold on a second, these are the other things you've got to bear in mind. Everything that is on show is going to be online. So you can't hold anything back. You can't sort of say, you've got to come and see this thing because it's not online. It's like everything's online. Because it should be. Online materials should be really rich. They should have, they should be detailed. If we have a textile made with a particular technique, and we've recorded a video about how that technique's done, that should be connected to the textiles that are made in that way. The digital content in the galleries needs to be context aware. So there are some things that make sense to consume or read or watch in a gallery, and there's some things that don't make sense to do that in. So what we have, an example of that in our galleries now, is all the videos that, you know, museum people love to put a series of vases out, or a series of whatever they might be, and then have a video of a talking head talking about how these vases, and that goes on for 20 minutes, and if you stand and watch people, they look at the vases and walk off. And the video's there as wallpaper. And it's important the video's there because it says the museum made this video. But the context is not right for actually watching that video. There's rarely ever any seats to sit down and watch a 20-minute video in any case. But what if that video was online? And what if that video you could take home with you? So that's sort of what we tried to do. So, and of course we didn't want to buy one system. We didn't want to buy the one thing that would solve all the problems. We wanted to make sure that there was a redundancy in that if a couple of systems didn't work, or the systems crashed, or they just couldn't be made, it wouldn't break everything. So we went with this model with everything should be like a mesh of systems. And the interfaces that sat on top of that, much like we talk about, you know, I've said that, you know, people don't come to museums to read labels, to read a book. They don't want to read a 40,000-word book standing up. The worst thing we can do to our collections is make them feel like the database that they're stored in. So, you know, the model we have for our websites with our collections on the web is a data. It looks and feels like a database. That may be okay on the web in some instances. It's probably used by some scholars some of the time, but it's not very friendly. And the worst thing you can do is put that in the middle of the gallery, just as like this big search box, search for blah. Like, you don't go to the museum to do that. I don't go to an exhibit to find a particular work. I go to an exhibit to be inspired by all the different things. And then I might be interested in a particular work, but after I've walked through that exhibition and seen how it's been organised spatially and all that stuff. Right? So, but when we put kiosks in our galleries, we end up putting a big search box in, or a grid. It's this big grid, and it's like, you know, it makes you feel like you're at work again. And I don't think interfaces in museums should feel like work. So local projects, you know, they saw the Mona pitch. Actually, I'd even gone as far as getting a price from Mona to do their system. And I said to local projects, the media design firm that we work with, come up with something better. Come up with a thing that is better than this iPod Touch with Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, and because that's pretty good and the price is pretty good. So they were like, well, look, you're a design museum, what if you gave everyone a pen? And they used this slide actually, these 3 slides, and this is the concept art for it. And they were like, hey, what if you give everyone a pen? And that pen allowed you to, it was your identity in the museum, which allowed you to collect all the things, which is the thing we wanted to do. And because you're holding this pen, you're going to put your phone away. And the pen would be a signifier that you were there to do stuff. It wasn't just about looking at stuff. It was about doing stuff. Design is about doing. Art is about doing too, I would argue too, but you might say that art, museums are primarily about looking. Should you give people glasses or microscopes, or I don't know, but you know what I mean. Like this idea of giving someone a pen was that way of subverting the building, because the building was very much a don't touch building. Obviously making the pen was very much a problem that we took out of local projects' hands, and we worked with a bunch of other firms to do that. And we ended up with a thing that looked like this, very different from the pen that you saw in that original sketch. And this is what it does. I mean, this is the video that plays in the galleries that shows you what it does. You can use the back end of the pen to pick up anything. Any object label you can pick up and it's saved. And you can explore that in more detail on the tables. It's effectively saved to your ticket. So your ticket is your identity in the museum, which means that as you go through the museum, you see that 20-minute talking head video, you can touch it and it's saved, and you can look at it on your phone later on. It's also on when you go home, you can look at it on our website without having to know what it is, where it is. The short version is, if this is all too long, it just bookmarks what's already on the web as you move around the galleries, which allows you to just enjoy the exhibitions, and when you need to do it, go and use it. So this is it actually working in the galleries. This is the video that the local projects produce. So here's an object that's on show, the person touches the back of the pen to it, they come to the tables, they touch the table, and there it is, and they can explore that in more detail. It's kind of nice, right? They can also, because they have the pen, anything that they draw and create on these tables, they can hit save, and that will be saved as well. I've been shocked at the amount of use that this gets. I mean, visitors get these pens when they come in, and you know, I thought, okay, this will be popular. The first 7 kind of days, we had 3,500 pens go out to visitors, and they collected 72,000 objects in the galleries. There's 700 objects on show, so there's 72,000 touches of those pens to those labels to collect things, which shows that people, if you give people the opportunity to take stuff away, they're actually pretty interested in it, right? And what that I hope also does, it frees up that desire to have lots of text on those labels in the galleries. Because if people are touching the ones they want to know more about, you can have all that text you want on the web. And it's in the right context for them to consume or read that text later. Of course, you know, with the wallpaper collection, we have the largest collection of wallpapers in North America, and it's a very significant collection. But much like textile collections as well, they're actually pretty hard to show, display and exhibit, and they're particularly hard to get younger people interested in. Wallpapers are kind of for teenagers, not that exciting. Anyway, maybe we're changing that. So much like the things that we were doing at the Powerhouse, this idea of having an immersion room, was you can draw your own wallpapers, but you can also navigate. This is people drawing their own wallpapers. It's a two projector setup. It's pretty amazing. You can also browse the historic wallpapers and see how the room would have felt surrounded by them. So in this sense, we're using digitized assets, digitized collections to bring those collections to life. We're using technology to bring what otherwise would have been quite static collections to life, and restoring the experience of them. And of course, you know, it's not surprisingly, the design your own is incredibly popular. And of course, because you can save it, people can save what they've done. They can also, of course, do their selfies in the corner. Interestingly, that piece with the selfies, people when they come to the room often say, why is this front projected instead of rear projected? Why can I see shadows on there? And it's like, well, if we didn't do that, people wouldn't be able to get those good selfies with the patterns on their faces and their clothes. So sometimes those decisions around putting the visitor back into the physical space really matter. Because the things that, you know, we had a lot of discussions about why don't we just get a video wall and do it like that. And it's expensive, but they were like, then you won't have shadows, it'll be really great. It's like, actually the shadows are what makes that even better. So sometimes it's counterintuitive. Sometimes the lower tech solution is a better solution. So yeah, as I was saying, first 7 days, you know, crazy amounts of stuff. Really, really crazy.